Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Rudrakacharya Ashtoktar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Rudrakacharya Ashtoktar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha bodreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 7th day of July, 2021, in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 1, The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, text number 9. So this is again a prose passage, which I'll just chant myself. Tatta hava enam devarshir hangsayanena pitaram Bhagavantam Hiranyakashipu upalabdhamanaha Sahasaivottayarhanena sahapita putrabhyam avahitanjali upataste. Translation. Lord Brahma, the father of Narada Muni, is the supreme person within this universe. As soon as Narada saw the great swan, he could understand that Lord Brahma had arrived. Therefore he immediately stood up, along with Swayambhuva Manu and his son Priyavrata, whom Narada was instructing. Then they folded their hands and began to worship Lord Brahma with great respect. Purport. As stated in the previous verse, Lord Brahma was accompanied by other demigods, but his specific carrier was the great swan. Therefore, as soon as Narada Muni saw the swan, he could understand that his father, Lord Brahma, who is also known as Hiranyakashipu, was arriving. Thus he immediately stood up with Swayambhuva Manu and his son Priyavrata to receive Lord Brahma and offer him respect. Okay, I'll read the next one too. Sanskrit is short. Bhagavan api bharata tad upanitarhana sukta vakenatitaram udita guna ganavatara sujaya Priyavratam adi purushas tam sadaya hasavaloka iti ho vacha. My dear King Parikshit, this is of course Shukadev speaking, continuing. My dear King Parikshit, because Lord Brahma had finally descended from Satyaloka to Bhuloka, Narada Muni, Prince Priyavrata, and Swayambhuva Manu came forward to offer him objects of worship and to praise him in highly qualified language, according to Vedic etiquette. At that time, Lord Brahma, the original person of this universe, felt compassion for Priyavrata, and looking upon him with a smiling face, spoke to him as follows. Purport. That Lord Brahma descended from Satyaloka to see Priyavrata indicates that the matter was very serious. Narada Muni had come to advise Priyavrata about the value of spiritual life, knowledge, renunciation, and bhakti. And Lord Brahma knew that Narada's instructions were very impressive. Therefore, unless Lord Brahma personally went to Gandhamadana hill to request Priyavrata, Lord Brahma knew that Prince Priyavrata would not accept his father's order. Brahma's purpose was to break Priyavrata's determination. Therefore, Brahma first looked upon Priyavrata with compassion. His smile and compassionate features also indicated that although Brahma would request Priyavrata to accept household life, Priyavrata would not be out of touch with devotional service. By the blessings of a Vaishnav, everything is possible. This is described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as Kripa Siddhi, or perfection attained simply by the blessings of a superior person. One usually becomes liberated and perfect by executing the regulative principles set down in the Shastras. Nonetheless, many persons have achieved perfection simply by the blessings of a spiritual master or superior. Priyavrata was the grandson of Lord Brahma, and as joking competition sometimes takes place between grandson and grandfather, in this case also Priyavrata was determined to remain in meditation, whereas Brahma was determined that he rule the universe. Thus Lord Brahma's affectionate smile and glance meant, quote, "My dear Priyavrata, you have decided not to accept household life, but I have decided to convince you that you must accept it." Close quote. Actually, Brahma had come to praise Priyavrata for his high standard of renunciation, austerity, penance, and devotion, so that he, Priyavrata, would not be deviated from devotional service, even though he would accept household life. In this verse, one important word is Sukta Vakena, or Vedic hymns. In the Vedas, there is the following prayer to Lord Brahma: Hiranyagarbha samavartatagre bhutas sajata patad eka asit. Unfortunately, I don't know what that means. Does anyone know Sanskrit here? There's no clear translation. But Brahma was received with the appropriate Vedic hymns, and because he was welcomed according to Vedic etiquette, he was very pleased. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So several things came to mind as I was reviewing this part of the Bhagavatam, preparing this morning. And one is that
when we read the whole Bhagavatam and we hear Srila Prabhupada's classes, sometimes he gives incidents that illustrate a point, and those incidents may not necessarily be in the Bhagavatam. So I was thinking of one especially where Prabhupada is also indicating how Lord Brahma came down in order to facilitate the management of the universe. He came down all the way from his abode and atop the sky. And this was an incident where Lord Indra, who you may realize after you hear the pastime of Govardhan Hill and how he completely lost it and tried to destroy the Vrindavan community because his honor was hurt by his sacrifice being stopped by Krishna. And also, there's a reason why he has eyes all over his body. That's not so obvious, but he has that. And because he's Indra, his name is Indra. It's very close to the word Indriya, isn't it? Indriya means senses. So he's kind of in the mode of passion, and I forget the exact incident, but he had sex with some Gandharva or somebody that he shouldn't have had, and so he was cursed to have women's sexual organs all over his body. Then he got a blessing from Muni that okay, or the one who cursed him. It won't be that; it will just be eyes. So he got eyes all over his body. So even when Krishna on the back of Garuda, along with Satyabhama, he had retrieved the earrings that had been stolen by Narakasura to return them to Mother Aditya, who was the mother of all the demigods. He went all the way to the heavenly planet, and there is Indra. And so he did that, and was thanked. And then Satyabhama saw there's all of these parijata trees. And so she said, "Can I have one, please?" And so Krishna said, "Yes." And so he started taking a parijata tree back down to Dwarka, and Indra objected. He's not supposed to do that. So there was a little battle. Of course, Indra lost. And Shukadev, at that point, reciting the Bhagavatam, he had some heavy words to say about Indra. This was after the Govardhan Leela. I mean, Krishna's doing his Dwarka Leela now, so this is Indra's tendency. So anyway, at one time, Indra, due to some lusty activity, he had to take the body of a hog. And so he's on earth, and he has his hog family. He has his hog wife, and he has his little hoglets, children, And so Indra has a very important role to play. I mean, he's managing the heavens. He controls the rain. He's essential for the proper management of the universe, which is what we're reading about here. And so Brahma came down in order to inform this hog that you're actually Indra. Please come with me back to the heavenly planets and resume your post. And so the Indra hog, he'd forgotten all about his life as Indra, And he said, "Well, I can't go anywhere. I have my responsibilities. I have my wife here. I have my children. I have a responsible position in the hog, society." And so Prabhupada tells this story as illustrating how we become attached, we become conditioned to our situation, and we don't realize that it's temporary, and we become acclimated. This is called heavy conditioning, and it's a false ego, a false sense of self. This was actually Indra, but we're all actually spirit souls. We're all servants of Krishna. We have a place in the spiritual world. We've completely forgotten that. 99.99% of the people have forgotten that. And we can go on lifetime after lifetime leading these false lives in whatever situation we come into. This wife, that wife, animal life, tree life, whatever. So Prabhupada tells this story, as he told it several times, but I think is only once where I heard and read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Brahma's solution, because this is an emergency, just like this is an emergency. The universe can't go on without Indra. It certainly can't go on without Priyavrata here. He actually, Brahma, and he had the power to uplift. He killed the wife, and the children of this hog. So he would break his attachment, and okay, come with him. And they got better bodies, like that. But that was an emergency situation. So then the other emergency, which is much more famous, is right in the Bhagavatam, is when Hiranyakashipu was performing severe austerities. Now, austerities give you power. They can be used for good or evil. And so this was definitely austerity in the deep mode of ignorance. He was meditating on this hill, and he was just standing on his toes for thousands of years, and he became so powerful. He, first of all, ants covered his whole body with an anthill, but he kept his life alive within the marrow of his bones. He was circulating the prana, so he was still alive. And the effulgence emanating from heat and light coming out of his head was so great, even in the hill, that it was scorching the whole universe. So the demigods prayed to Brahma, please go down and take care of the situation. So he comes down, and he pours some drops. He carries, just like a sannyasi, there's a little water pot they always carry, kamandalu. So this is a powerful water that Brahma has. So he sprinkled some water on the anthill, and out comes Hiranyakashipu renewed with this very powerful young body, and he sees Brahma, and I always marvel at these prayers because he addresses him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He just came up, and he glorifies him, and he wants a boon, and the boon, of course, is immortality, but he can't give him immortality. You know this story. But the reason I'm telling it, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, and that it was an emergency, and only Brahma could handle it. The same thing is happening now, and the other thing that's interesting here is that throughout the Bhagavatam, we're witnessing activities and also the Bhagavad-Gita and the Mahabharata. This is, for the fate of the earth or the fate of the universe. These are very, very key pastimes that are taking place. And in the case of the Bhagavad-Gita, of course, Krishna is right there to induce Arjuna to fight. And so otherwise the battle can't go on, and Yudhishthira can't be enthroned. And the very context of the Bhagavatam is that this great king, Parikshit, who was a descendant, he's of the Pandavas, right? Arjuna was his grandfather, I think, wasn't he? And he was running things. It was at the eve of Kali Yuga, but he was holding back Kali Yuga. You read the first canto and you see how he encountered Kali personified. He was, and yet he chose to accept the curse. He was powerful enough he could have counteracted it. That was cursed by this Brahmin boy who, many of you may not know the story, but his father had been insulted. It was very unusual. And Parikshit was very deferential to the Kshatriyas, but he was tired and he was hungry and thirsty, and he came to this sage's Samika Rishi, and this is often happens, that he's in samadhi and he doesn't react when the great king comes. He just wants a little water. He's completely absorbed. So the king said, oh, this is an offense. So he saw a dead snake and he put it around the shoulder of this sage. His son heard about it, a Shringi, who was very powerful because he had Brahma Tejas. He was trained, but he was a kid. He didn't have he was a child. He didn't have what is it? Discrimination. Thank you. Good word. Sorry. And so he completely became angry and enraged, and he cursed Maharaj Parikshit to die in 7 days from a bite of this snake bird called Takshika. And he had the tejas to do the curse, but he didn't have the discrimination how to use it, when to use it. So suddenly the whole world is in the balance. Here's this great king, and what's going to happen, But so Maharaj Parikshit, he decided to accept that curse. And he gave up his kingly garb, gave up the kingdom, gave up everything. He just sat down on the bank of the Ganges, or the Yamuna Ganges, and to hear the Bhagavatam. And Shukadev came, and that's how we hear in the Bhagavatam. And it is said that the Bhagavatam itself is now providing the knowledge, the transcendental knowledge that will guide the people of this age. It's risen just like the sun. So he actually did better service by doing that, because the Bhagavatam has come down to us, Srila Prabhupada translate. So what I'm getting at by recounting that is that just like the Bhagavad-Gita is so important for every living entity on the planet, especially human beings who could understand it, right? In other words, nothing is trivial. There's no time wasted here. The whole Bhagavatam was spoken, the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures, for the enlightenment of the souls in this planet, because Kali Yuga is ascendant. But here from the Bhagavatam, anyone who hears it properly from the right source and tries to put into his life the principles and tenets that are there, can even navigate this Kali Yuga and go back to Godhead, even in this age. Because there's one very special quality of this age, is there's all of these faults. It's listed in the 12th canto. We don't live very long. Mercy is being destroyed. Discrimination is being destroyed. There's so many. There's one verse in the first canto, but there's many verses. Bhumi Gita. But then there's a very nice verse describing the special quality of this age. And who's going to give it to me now? Color? Color dosha. Nide rajan. Asti eko mahadguna. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya mukta sangam param vrajet. This Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. The Sukadeva is beginning to break it. Who can deny it? It's like out the door. It's an ocean of faults, and they're getting worse. But there's one very special quality of this age. Just by chanting the holy name of the Lord, Kirtanadeva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. One can get freed of all the attachments and entanglements of this age and go to the supreme abode, param vrajet. So, and the very last verse, I won't recite it now, the very last verse of the Bhagavatam talks about Sankirtan, non-Sankirtan. So back to our present situation here. So Brahma has come down, and we see everything is here in the relationships. In fact, when you think about it, Krishna content is all about relationships, right? Renewing our relationship with Krishna, relating to other devotees. How do we relate with the non-devotees? And, the innocent, like that. So here we have this dilemma, because Priyavrata has become totally committed to bhakti by the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, right? And therefore, even though he's the elder son, Uttanapada had been ruling. But now Uttanapada is not, he's gone. And we're at the junction where there needs to be someone to take over the management of the universe. But Priyavrata is like, he's in the mood of the Haryasvas and the Shavalasvas, Daksha's sons, who were preached to by Narada Muni and renounced everything and took off. They didn't want any part of it. So it's not clear from the, I don't know if it's been mentioned, Daksha, after cursing Narada, you won't be able to stay anywhere, for any length of time, and said, okay, just keep traveling and preaching. So his solution to the problem was, okay, no more sons, So he had a bunch of daughters, and the Narada wouldn't go near the daughters, and so they then became the source of all the project, the generation. They were married to various sages and great kings like that. So, but still, so now we have a similar situation in one sense, in that the son who can do the job of running the universe has been, quote, spoiled by Narada. He wants to renounce. He doesn't want anything to do with it. But it's different now, because the relationship is that Brahma is, first of all, the spiritual master of Narada, and he's the grandfather of Priyavrata. So he has this relationship to all the protagonists. And you can see from the verse that we read, the two verses, that everyone is completely deferential and respectful to Brahma. Narada Muni, is his father and his spiritual master. He said, and they stood up. This is reminds me. I remember, because when I worked on the Krishna book and all these books, and you read them, and you realize, and this is one of the ways in which you show respect. When a respectable person comes in, came into this temple, who was a great spiritual master, you stand up and offer your obeisances if the curtains are closed. There's a whole thing, you don't offer obeisances to anyone but Krishna when the curtains are open, except Prabhupada. We have the whole Guru Puja and everything during the curtains open. But be that as it may, you stand up and then offer obeisances. The standing up is important. We used to have a tradition, I think, here, and I've seen it in other temples, that, okay, the Shringa prayers are over, everyone's sitting, right? The curtain is open, and the curtain's closed, and Tulsi comes out, and Tulsi Puja is there. And while they're saying in the English, they bow down, of course, to Tulsi, but then you don't stand up. No, you sit there and say the English. And I made it a point, we don't do that here anymore. You stand up when Tulsi comes in, and then bow down, and then we staying up while I'm reciting the English, like that. So it's important to realize that holding is standing up and now bowing down. Who got into trouble that he didn't stand up? Get off the Vyasa-san, stand up? Romaharshan, remember? Romaharshan, when Balaram was doing the travels to different places and holy places. Everybody else stood up, but Romaharshan, he was in the position of the guru, so he didn't stand up, and Krishna and Balaram killed him with a blade of grass, you know. He said afterward, the sages were shocked. We said, well, we appointed him as the guru here. Well, I can bring him back to life. Do you want me to do that? No, that's okay. You know, we have this other sutta, Romaharshan Sutta, who's the Sutta Goswami we're hearing in the Bhagavatam. And but rather we'd like you to kill this demon, Bolvala, who's messing up our sacrifices. So Balaram did that. But just the point is, here they're following up. Everyone stood up, right, and offered prayers and glorification of Brahma. And then you have this wonderful pastime here where Brahma, he's felt compassion for Priyavrata. Because Priyavrata is, you know, between and betwixt. He wants to do his bhajan. He's been, you know, meditating and chanting, following Narada Muni. But now they want me to manage, you know. I mean, as I mentioned, you know, to get someone to manage a temple is often difficult. What to speak of the universe? Anyone here spontaneously attracted to try to manage the universe? So Priyavrata, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. But because now Brahma is going to ask him, you know, and Brahma is the chief personality in the universe, and he's his spiritual master and father, and therefore he'll accept it. And the whole point here, as Prabhupada brings out in the purport, is that he's going to encourage him and explain, don't worry, you'll be able to remain a devotee and practice your devotion even with all of these responsibilities. This is the one of the main lessons here, is that if you're really strict and you're you know, want to be a devotee, there's no impediments. What is that, right? Sabai pangsang paro dharmo yato bhaktir hokshaje ahoitukya pratiyata yatma supasiditi. That a pratiyata means no impediments. You don't allow any impediment to stop your devotion. Sometimes it's a very difficult situation. You know, we're in an ideal situation. We have the temple, you know, and a good association, prasadam, you know, we can chant, it's reasonably quiet, you know. But that may not always be there. That may not always be there, you know. And there will be difficult situations when you don't have all those things. But if you've built up your spiritual muscles by your sadhana and you're strong enough, then you can still maintain your remembrance of Krishna, still keep chanting in any environment. You know, Srila Prabhupada showed by his example, coming to the most... I mean, I lived in New York City, you know. I remember I lived there twice, once as a you know, karmi, and then when I was a devotee, I lived there for a year in the big temple, the 55th Street Temple. It's never quiet. At night, there's all of this hum, this loud hum going on, you know, all of the traffic and all these things. Every so often you hear a shout, you know, every so often you hear a gun go off. You know, luckily we weren't in that kind of neighborhood, but it's like... Huh? A city that never sleeps, and you have trouble sleeping too, because you know. Anyway, so but Prabhupada came into that environment, and there was no big temple, you know. He's living in the Bowery. I won't tell you about the Bowery, you know. And first uptown, sometimes, you know, the whole way in which Prabhupada moved around, you can see Krishna's hand in it, because he really couldn't get anything going uptown. You know the story? You know, he had a contact with a guru there. What was his name? Dr. Mishra. You know, he had a yoga studio established, you know, but it was a little hatha yoga, a little meditation, you know. But Prabhupada accepted that. He would speak to them. But after he saw how much Prabhupada was influential, he didn't want him to speak anymore. That's true. It's true. So and then he was living with this man in his studio, and then he moved Prabhupada into a little office a few blocks away. So he's living in this office. It describes how he had classes there. It was like a train car. Imagine a room that's maybe like, you know, if we move this up maybe a couple of feet, that's as wide as it is. So you're sitting over there about 6 feet from me, and Prabhupada's behind the desk, you know, giving class to a few people. So it was anything but ideal, but this is what he had. And I think it was there, if I'm not mistaken, where Prabhupada dictated that introduction to the Bhagavad-Gita, which became the actual introduction. his first recording. Someone gave him a reel-to-reel. I mean, I deal with these things, big heavy thing, you know. And Prabhupada learned how to operate it. And he recorded that whole introduction. So he comes back one day and the place has been burglarized. You know? Somebody took the tape recorder, which is really the only thing of value in there. And of course they didn't take the most valuable thing, which was the actual tape with Prabhupada's recording on it. But they, you know. And so then Prabhupada lost his desire to stay uptown at that time. He suspected the superintendent, but he couldn't prove it, you know. So he realized it wasn't secure. So just at that time, Krishna arranged for someone downtown in the Paradox restaurant, which I used to go to. I used to live 2 blocks from the Paradox restaurant when I was living in New York. A vegetarian restaurant, you know, based on macrobiotics, that whole thing. And it was kind of a hot spot where people would go. They'd go to India and come back there, and they'd tell all their friends. So it was you know. So someone said, "Hey, there's an uptown guru. There's a new guru in town, you know." So someone went up to and was attracted and decided it would be better for him to come downtown. And so they arranged, and that's how he got his place down on the Bowery. You know, Krishna arranged it, which is anyway. It all goes. So, but my point is that. The atmosphere was anything but ideal, but Prabhupada's Krishna consciousness was just like minds in a stone. There's no question of, you know, him deviating. So that for the purpose of preaching, he did that, and for the purpose of managing the universe, which after all is essential service that has to be done. You know, because I mean the world has to be maintained. Human beings have to be born and go through and everything. So Brahma, he's also, you know, cognizant of that, how difficult it can be when he was given the, you know, his position. He had to accept so many austerities. So he's now going to speak to Priyavrata and convince him to take on the role. And the key element in this, and one of the main lessons to learn is that if you're requested to do a very difficult service, and you're a serious devotee, you're requested by your guru or your guru's guru, and everyone, you know, then that becomes your test, you know, to actually accept it and do the best you can do. Same thing with Arjun. Arjun was, you know, requested by his guru, and who happened to be Krishna, you know, to fight, and he had all kinds of reasons why he didn't want to fight. But in the end, you know, he said, "Karishye vachanam tava," I will do as you say. Practically the whole process of bhakti is there in those 3 words. If we can say to the guru and the authorities, you know, the unquestioned kadeshe vachanam tava, then the heart becomes purified, and we can make very nice advancement in devotional service. So I'm going to read these 2 translations again. I'm sorry, my life is such that all kinds of work is piled up on me, and I'm still trying to get out from under it. So I'm going to end on time. And let me read these 2 translations. Lord Brahma, the father of Narada Muni, is the supreme person within this universe. As soon as Narada saw the great swan, he could understand that Lord Brahma had arrived. Therefore, Narada, immediately stood up along with Swayambhuva Manu and his son Priyavrata, whom Narada was instructing. Then they folded their hands and began to worship Lord Brahma with great respect. And then the second verse. My dear King Parikshit, because Lord Brahma had finally descended from Satyaloka to Bhuloka, that's the earth, Narada Muni, Prince Priyavrata, and Swayambhuva Manu came forward to offer him objects of worship and to praise him in highly qualified language, according to Vedic etiquette. At that time, Lord Brahma, the original person of this universe, felt compassion for Priyavrata, and looking upon him with a smiling face, spoke to him as follows. And actually, I just thought of one other thing before you ask for questions. Within the Bhagavad-Gita, we often read these verses like, what is it? Mat karma krin, the last verse of the 11th chapter, which Prabhupada says the essence of the Gita. Mat karma krin, mat padamo, mat bhakta sangha varjitaha, nirvaira savabhuteshu yaksamameti pandava. So mat karma krin means doing my work, which happens to be fighting this battle which Arjuna doesn't want to do. That's the first. Mat paramo, but all recognizing me as the supreme. Mat paramo, mat bhakta sangha varjitaha, and to be in the mood of a devotee, doing it out of love and devotion. Mat bhakta, and free of bad association. Sangha varjita, and free of material attachments. nirvaira sarvabhuteshu, without being envious or malignant, or what should I say, hateful toward any living entity. Nirvaira, having no enemy. Sarvabhuteshu, such a person comes to me. In other words, at the end of this, it comes back to Godhead. So Prabhupada said this is encapsulates the whole purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita. So that's what's going on here. Arjuna is asked to do a very, very difficult job for the sake of Krishna, for establishing Dharma in the world, And Priyavrata is also being asked to do what he considers very, very difficult, against his will, certainly. But he'll take it up. And when we read about his activities, we'll see that some of them are pretty amazing, what he had to do. So that's, and also in the, was it the 18th chapter, I think? Yeah, I know, I forget the Sanskrit, but it says, through one's work, if one worships me through one's work, one can become purified and come back to Godhead. In other words, if you're Krishna conscious enough, you can purify or spiritualize your household life as well as your work. And always remembering I'm doing this for Krishna, and what is that? This one final verse, the 11th canto, the 9 Yogendras, it's kind of an expansion of Yat Karoshi Yadashnasi. He says, Kaye Navacha Manasendriyava Buddhyatmanava Anusasasvabhavat Kadoti Yadyat Sakalam Parasmai Narayanayati Samarpayetat. Whatever you do with your body, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, with your very self, whatever it may be, always be thinking and doing it in such a way that it can be, say, this is an offering to Narayan. I'm doing this as an offering to Narayan. This is the consciousness of the pure devotees. Is that every breath, every step is actually in service. And they're conscious of Krishna at every moment. Oh, he's the recipient of this, the benefit of this service. Then it doesn't matter what situation you're in. Okay, any comments or questions at this time? We have the mic loaded up. There's a mic somewhere. We have 2 mics. Hare Krishna. There must be some stars crossed about the mics, because the other mics aren't working. We have our mic walla here.
Thank you for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
That sage you were trying to think of, cursing Indra with the female parts, that was Gautama.
Gautama Muni.
It wore down in your kirtan, right?
Oh, that's the one without. That's the one without any batteries. Bring out the other one. No. Well, we can hear kind of, but we want the world to hear. 100. How many people? 100, 200 people.
That's it. Hare Krishna.
There you go.
So, it's Gautama Muni curses Indra because evidently she had been made by Lord Brahma to be like the epitome of beauty.
Oh.
Her name was Ahalya.
Okay.
And Indra just couldn't keep his eyes off her. Every chance he could get, he'd go to the ashram and hide in the bushes, the woods, and just... So he abused her in the form of Gautama, and then he got cursed by Indra, and then her curse was to remain as a stone until Lord Ram would come and benedict her, and then she got back her. And the other thing was in the verse, you quoted the Sanskrit, didn't know what that meant. I don't know what that means, but Lord Brahma is addressed as Hiranyakashipu.
Yeah.
And you remember we from the Lagu Bhagavatam Rita, Rupa Goswami says the Hiranyagarbha is a name for the universal form.
Yeah.
And the universal form isn't actually the form of Garbhodakshai Vishnu. It's actually a subtle form of Lord Brahma. And he says there, because Lord Vishnu is all spiritual and the Virata Rupa is material, so Lord Brahma is expansion, or he could be like that. And that probably explains how he understands the intricacies of the entire universe down to the minutest detail, because in one sense he is the form of all of it.
Wow, thank you for that. We're getting all this knowledge coming in from Lagu Bhagavatam. Yeah. This goes to show you how, my service is, it's pretty ecstatic. I proofread that Lagu Bhagavatam, but proofreading, oftentimes it says, is that comma italic or not? In other words, I don't remember all this stuff, but but I do remember some of the things. When I first started, I mentioned it several times with the third canto, and the battle of Hiranyakashipu and the boar incarnation. That was the first thing I proofread. Wow, this is this is like a whole new thing. Anyway, and then the song of Shiva sticks out. That was tremendous. So, and one thing is that, I get to read the books before anyone else. Because Prabhupada, of course, worked on the books. And so, when the fifth canto came out, the fifth canto was part of the, I don't know if it was both volumes, one of the volumes, was part of the 17 books marathon. And so, they gave me a few chapters here, a few chapters there. So one of the chapters they gave me was the residents of Jambudweep offer prayers, And Prahlad Maharaj has a prayer there. Again, it's a prose passage, but it's a prose that has a lot of beat to it. Om Namo, a lot of devotees know this prayer, and I'll tell you what. Om Namo Bhagavate Narasinghaya Namaste Jastejase Avadavir Bhavavaddanaka Vaddadangsha Karma Shayan Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasa Grasa Om Swaha Abhiham Abhiham Atmani Bhuhishta Om Shraum. That word Shraum is the seed syllable for the deity of Nrsingadev. Each of the deities, they have their special seed. But that Shraum, as soon as I read that syllable, I learned what it was. I said, oh, it sounds like when he's ripping apart Hiranyakashipu. So what it means is, it's a prayer for purification. Prahlad is teaching us. Om Namo Bhagavate, I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsingadev. Avadavir Bhava, please, the repetition is high emotion, he's emphasizing. Please be manifested in my heart. Avadavir Bhava Vajranaka Vajradangsha. And with your thunderbolt-like teeth and thunderbolt-like fangs, the nails, rip apart the material desires in my heart. Vajranaka Vajradangsha Karma Shayan. Karma Shayan means the aspiration for karmic fruitive activities. Randaya. Tear them apart. Randaya Tamo Grasa. Dissipate the darkness in my heart. Om Svaha, I offer oblations unto you. Abhiyam Atmani. Please give me fearlessness in this world, Om Shaum. And then so in that purport, Prabhupada, discusses a wonderful purport. At the end, he says, any devotee who wants to be free of material desires should offer prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, as Prahlad does in this verse. It's prose of the verse. I said, oh, this is a manuscript page I'm working on here, So I immediately memorized the whole Sanskrit. And I often chant it. We have our Nrsingadev pictures here from Mayapur. So it may be a little much to learn, but I can teach you a little smaller one, which is also extremely important. Some of the Om Shrim Shraum, it has a beginning. You're supposed to chant it. Ugram Viram Mahavishnam Dwalantam Sarvatomukam Nishingham Bhishanam Badram Mrityum Namamyaham. I offer obeisance unto O Lord Nrsingadev. What is it? Ugram, Viram, very ferocious when you're confronted with the demons. And Viram, powerful. Mahavishnam, not that he's Mahavishnu, but that he's a great manifestation of Vishnu. Ugram Mahavishnam, Dwalantam Sarvatomukam. In all directions your faces are there, blazing with anger at the demons. Dwalantam Sarvatomukam. Nishingham, half man, half lion. Bhishanam, very frightening, but for the demons. But Badram, very auspicious for the devotees. And Mrityum, the death of death. In other words, you give liberation. You bestow liberation. Namamyaham, I offer my obeisances. So this prayer, as you may know, I read this, when the Jagannath deities in Puri are renewed, I think every 12 years, right? The Brahmins, crowds of Brahmins are chanting this mantra thousands and thousands of times. I may forget how many thousands. But it goes on and on for days, this particular mantra. So we could easily learn that, And we can offer it to Lord Nrsimhadev. And then we can report after a few weeks and tell me what the result is, how you feel yourself.
You got me fired up. That's the Maha Mantra for Lord Nrsimhadev.
To go to Mahatma.
And once again, Laghu Bhagavatamrita says that in one of the Leelas of Brahma's getting enlightenment from Lord Krishna, we usually say it's the Gayatri Mantra.
Yeah.
In one of the Leelas, it's that mantra
All
that
right.
he hears for enlightenment, for creation.
Hare Krishna. Worth memorizing, huh? All glories to the Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol. Oh, Krishna. So what was that book?